Welcome to Fit as a Fiddle Plus. For those of you that are just joining in, we try to interview somebody different every single month. We're here the third Monday of every month at 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And today we have Coach Anna Lang with us, and I am so excited to interview her. And Anna combines the ups and downs of overcoming depression, attempted suicide. That one I was kind of like, ugh, attempted suicide, homelessness, and personality disconnection with her experience as a 25-year entrepreneur to provide workshops, coaching, and facilitation focused on what gets us stuck, what keeps us stuck, and how we can get unstuck. So, oh my goodness, Anna, give me just a little bit of your backstory. I'm so intrigued on how you have come to be in the place that you're in today. So what is just a little brief history of your backstory there?
Oh, well, it's funny when I talk about my backstory with people, very often it's not very unique. I started off little kid, at some point learned a very specific set of rules to live in my environment, thinking those rules were really normal and the rules were different in any different environment. And so I learned how to not be this over here and to be that over there, until I was so wound up into knots that I had no idea
Mm.
who I was, what I wanted, where I was going, what was right, what was wrong. And it created this absolute chaos in my head. And I remember no time in my life where I did not have that chaos in my head. So I couldn't even tell you when it precisely started, but there was
Wow.
always chaos. And the chaos was, oh, you've done something wrong. Oh my God, da, da, da. You're broken. You're this, you're that. It was an hyper vigilance would be the term that a psychologist would use. I was a hyper vigilant child. So I was constantly monitoring my environment all the time. And this got worse and worse as I got older. And I thought throughout my life, different things would fix it. So I would, you know, go after the boyfriend because, boyfriend, then love, then I'm lovable, then I'm not broken. But then that wouldn't work out because I wasn't being me. So how can that relationship work? Right. And jobs. Oh, if I'm getting a promotion or if I'm making more than everybody else, the activities, the hobbies, if I'm the best in the class, if I'm the best student, if I'm the best, that was my life. It was this stressful pursuit of being okay, of sticking a landing somewhere so that I could prove
Wow.
to myself that I wasn't a write-off.
So kind of the other cliche that comes to my mind is kind of like walking on eggshells.
Yeah. I mean, I
It's
don't
like,
even know.
oh, I want to be careful that I don't do something wrong. I don't want somebody to, to maybe not like me or tell me I don't fit here or that I don't belong here. That's a hard road. That's a tough way to live. And especially as a child, because you don't know what to do with that information.
You think it's normal. You think it's
Hmm.
normal. You live by those rules. And that's the other thing that happens is those rules chased me into my adult life. So the rules that I learned as a kid so that my mom wouldn't yell at me or I wouldn't get grounded or the kids wouldn't tease me, when I would go into my adult life and something would require me to challenge those rules, there would be a full body shutdown. Like I would have a panic attack and I wouldn't know where it was coming from. There would just suddenly be, I couldn't breathe and the room was spinning and I couldn't be in crowds. I couldn't be around people. I couldn't go it was like feeling that you're imploding from the inside all the time.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. What was the turning point
The
that
turning
led
point.
you to start breaking free from that? Was there
Well,
a particular thing or was it a decision? Tell me, what were you thinking?
well, there was actually a really profound, for me, profound moment. And the preamble to it, the short preamble is that I made myself into somebody who could be lovable and then got married to a person who then we did not have a very functional marriage because I wasn't ever a person that was authentic in that marriage. So there was a lot of, I would cry every single day. It wasn't unusual. I didn't feel that it was abnormal. I thought everybody cried every day. I didn't realize that that wasn't normal. And one day I was sitting on, and we had this old, it was like a weird lime green couch because it was the only couch that we could agree on. So this weird colored lime couch. I was sitting on this couch and I was crying. My husband was sitting, and I can still picture, he's right here. And I don't remember what we were arguing about. I don't remember why I was crying. I don't even know if we were arguing. I just remember that I was crying, and the result, because the result was generally the same. There was something wrong with me. I was the tornado. I was the problem. I was the thing that was wrecking the relationship. It was me feeling broken and just defeated. And I remember feeling this, and I remember looking up, and right in front of me there's this staircase. And I promise this is going somewhere. And there's this staircase, and
No, I want to hear the end of the story.
I remember feeling jealous of the staircase because it knew exactly what it was and nobody questioned it. And it wasn't wrong for being what it was. And then and this is the weirdest thing, and I to this day can't explain it. In that moment, I started floating. I literally started floating towards the staircase. Like, I feel like I left my body and I was floating towards the staircase, and I turned around, and there was this, I could see myself on the couch next to my husband, and it was the weirdest sensation. We'd been in this relationship for 16 years, and we looked like roommates. We didn't even look like we were in a relationship. And then there was uh, this intense sensation, and it wasn't me. It was, and I'm going to use the word Juliet just for privacy.
Mhm.
I wasn't me. I was this other person. And I'll tell you a little bit about Juliet. Juliet was a prodigy. She was this, voted the best in every class she ever took. She had so much potential. She was going to go on and she was going to change the world. And then she got into a relationship, and they ended up moving across the sea. And then they were going to get deported, or her boyfriend was going to get deported. So he convinced her to marry him. And then so she did. And then, well, it wasn't the right time for her to pursue this dream. And then, sort of decision by decision, she kept putting off her own life until one day it got so far away from her that she just replaced her dreams with a bottle of booze, and she closed the curtain on her own life and never came back out again. And I realized when I was floating there that I had a choice. I could either continue what I called the March of Juliet, or I could get the F out of that relationship and live. Those were my options.
Wow. And after 16 years, that's a big decision.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, you're so
remember.
entrenched in the relationship at that point. I mean, much earlier than 16 years, I'm sure, but especially 16 years, that's a huge decision for you.
Yeah, it was the most bizarre thing, because after I had that thought, I was slammed back into my body. And this isn't like I dreamt this. It was a
Mhm.
physical slamming. I actually thought I had a heart attack. I didn't know where I was. I was completely confused. There was this weird popping sensation in my body, and then I was deadly calm. There was no shame. There was no guilt. It was this void. And I looked at my husband and I said, I don't love you. And this has to end. It was just that clear. It was just that moment. And that's what started it. It was, I feel it was divine
Wow.
intervention. That's all. I've never had an experience like that before or since.
Now, so of course, then I'm sure things always get messy before they get better when you're trying to separate. But was there a specific moment that you had the realization that there was potential for, was that the moment, or was there a moment after you got separated that you realized there is potential for the first time, that you can be authentic? How
Oh,
soon did that feeling happen for you after you made the decision you had to separate?
so it was a while, actually. Um, it was, I ended up in the most sloppy of ways, and there's another story about that, but we'll say that I was separated from my husband. Nobody knew. None of my friends, not my family, not even the kids knew. I would get up at 5 a.m. I would go back to the house. I would get the kids ready for school, put them on a bus, go back downtown, work in my failing, my business was hanging on by like this very thin thread at the time. And I didn't want anyone to know, because if they knew how unstable my life was, maybe then I would lose all my clients. I couldn't afford food. It was a train wreck. I would go back at night. I would put them to bed. I did that for 6 whole months before it hit, a head. And my husband at the time invited our whole family over for Christmas for a big party at the house I wasn't living in for 6 months.
But nobody knew you hadn't been there for 6 months.
But nobody knew. And you know what? That was when, it wasn't when I realized I had potential, but it's when I started embracing my potential, because I recognized for the first time in my life that nobody was coming to rescue me, that if I wanted my life to get better, I was the one who had to do something about it, that I was reliving all of these patterns of unworthiness from my childhood, that I didn't want anyone to see that I wasn't okay, that I had to take care of myself, that, I had to be good on paper, that the visual had to work all the time, that I couldn't be a mess, that all the coulds, ought tos, got tos, and shoulds. And I went, it.
Mm-hmm. Because it's exhausting.
It is exhausting. And it was,
and then the financial stress on top of it.
The financial stress was crazy. And here's the thing is, my ex wasn't a bad person for scheduling that party. I was not a clear communicator for not making it like 100% no questions asked, this is happening. Like, I was living in such a clandestine way of, yeah, maybe he can make these weird assumptions from that. So anyways, yes, it took me stepping into my power. And you can't feel your own possibility until you start to, in a way, feel that power that you have inside of you. And I think that's where that started, where I was like, whoa, I can do these things and I don't melt, and I don't, yes, people dislike me. And I was sort of beyond the point of caring at that point, because I was homeless. I was living out of a warehouse with no bathroom, no sink. There was a toilet down the hall somewhere, which nobody wanted to use.
I get it. No, I get that. Wow. So that was your stint of being homeless.
Yeah.
So you're living in this warehouse. You don't really have any of the necessities that you really need, but you're making it work for you. And what was your biggest challenge during that time?
Oh, my biggest challenge was overcoming all of the muscles. I often talk to my clients about personal development. When they first come to see me, I'll say to them, I want you to look at this as a fitness program. And the muscles that you have now are super strong. So all the old ways you do things, all the old beliefs you have, all of the things you learned are really strong. And that was the same with me. All of my old stories were really strong. So for example, I was spinning my tires to attract clients I didn't really want, and that didn't really want me, because I was trying to contort myself into something that maybe somebody would buy something from.
Okay.
Right. And that's not a unique challenge to a homeless person, but I happened to be homeless and trying to get a business. So I was trying to contort myself into everything. That doesn't work.
And you're trying to, of course, present yourself as not being homeless.
Right. And that doesn't work. And that's an old muscle. So authenticity is a new muscle. So I had to learn that new muscle. And I had, avoiding conflict in the name of peace. That one, by the way, ruins businesses and relationships. It ruins so many things, because nobody's being, again, come back to authenticity. I struggled with all of those internal, if I show up as who I am,
Okay.
muscles. That my world will end. I will be unsafe. People won't like me. And not even people won't like me. I won't be able to survive.
Well, because if people knew, they wouldn't do business with me.
Exactly.
And so I don't dare let anybody know.
Yeah. And then, of course, you don't want
Mm-hmm.
to disappoint people, and you don't want to be a weight on other people, and all of the stories. So my biggest challenges were getting over my own stories. Those muscles were so strong.
Wow. How did you stay motivated and inspired through that time in your life to allow yourself the time to learn those to learn a different way of thinking or a different way of presenting, or basically how did you get through that time or stayed motivated and inspired to build those other muscles that you needed?
Um, it's this might sound kind of crazy, but those when I was homeless, I was having some of the most fun I had ever had in my life because I was this kind of hot mess. And I was really sort of enjoying it because I had never had the freedom to be a mess. Does that make
Aha.
sense?
Yes,
So,
because in the relationship you were trying to be this perfect wife and mother and all those things, and
yeah,
business owner. Mhm.
and the business owner, and when you're always trying to be what everybody else will like or approve of or whatever, when you're homeless, you're kind of, yes, there's that whole anxiety ridden part, and I'm not going to downplay that. It was really super stressful. But there was also this sort of 5-year-old in me who was like, oh, this is really cool. And, I'm on an adventure. And, and
Well, and
so,
because once you closed the door and nobody even knew that you were there, you could be you.
yeah. And I could just exist, and it felt like freedom to me.
Mhm.
So that part I found awesome. The harder part I found to stay motivated was after, when I had created a new life, as I call it, or I had expanded, because I'm not different. I'm just more of who I was before, and I've
Mhm.
allowed more of me to come out. But when I have the penthouse and I have a business, and then it's like I'm not overcoming this big adversity. Do I matter? Does this matter? Or am I doing things that matter? That's when it's harder to stay motivated. At least that's what
Yeah.
I found. So
Yeah, when you're kind of in the soup, you feel like you have to just keep pushing forward. And when you finally get out of the soup, you're thinking, now I can relax, but for what purpose?
yeah, well, you're like, hey, I can relax until the next crisis because that's another muscle.
That's
That's another thing I
yes.
learned, right? Oh, I want the drama because then I overcome the drama and then I feel good about myself. It's a way for me to show myself that I'm valuable and that I'm smart and that I'm capable. So I used to create that drama. That was another muscle.
Well,
Um,
and if you're not creating it, you're just waiting, as they say, for the shoe to drop.
yeah,
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 you're like, okay, what's
absolutely.
going to go wrong next week?
Yeah. But if you want to go back to when you say, how do I stay motivated now? Um, there's one thing, I lean into the vision, right? If I'm feeling not
Okay.
motivated, lean into my vision, what's on the other side. And if I'm still procrastinating, I know it's three things. Either it's out of my skill zone, so it's not something I'm super competent in. So I'm a student in some way. It's
Okay.
either, or I don't want to do it. So inserted or subordinated or have to kind of energy, or it's not safe. There's something in there that I perceive, my body perceives, my brain, my subconscious
Ah,
perceives isn't safe. If those
that
three,
gut feeling that we tell everybody to pay attention to.
yeah. And if you don't have one of those three things, I promise you, your motivation's fine. Those will be your intruders of motivation.
Interesting. I have not heard it put that simply, but you are correct. And I find that I procrastinate if something is just a little bit outside of my reach in the technology, that I know that I need to have XYZ done, and I'm not real sure how to get across the finish line. I
Yeah.
have a tendency to procrastinate. But what I've discovered about myself, if I just roll up my sleeves, and again, action comes first and clarity comes second. If I just roll up my sleeves and start taking action, it becomes clear as I push my way through it. And now that I know that about myself, I have a tendency not to procrastinate near as long before I take action.
Have you ever read the book One Small Step?
I have not read the whole book, but I've read snippets of it. Yes. Mhm.
I recommend that to anybody. That tenet is a core value of my training, and you just spoke to it beautifully. Take one step. You'll be
Mhm.
one step closer than you were before. You've lost nothing.
Right. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Now, what are some simple pieces or steps that you discovered that help you move into a more empowered mindset? How did you actually change the mindset? That's the tough one, I think. That's the big one. That's the
Oh,
big part. That's the big aha.
Okay, this is great because and I mean, this has been it was 2011 when this journey started. So we're on year 13, and I have distilled out these, I call them the 6 keys. And
Okay.
I don't care if you're doing a nurture grow kind of personal development, which means I'm somebody who I simply want to figure out who I am and what makes me happy. Or I call them the accelerate elevate groups. And those are the like, I want my business to blow up, and those guys who are like go
Yeah.
getter kind of energy. If any of the 6 keys are missing, it's a foundation basically, and there's a gap. And I promise you their stuff is falling into it. And you can pinpoint where people get stuck by which one of the keys they're not addressing. And the 6 keys are super simple. There's,
Okay.
for example, the past is not your future is one of the 6 keys. Celebration is one of the 6 keys. Challenge your defaults, one of the 6 keys. Seek possibility. Oh no, now I'm forgetting which one I'm on. There's 2 more. There's own your defaults, seek possibility, or sorry, challenge your defaults. No, now I'm gonna lose 2 just because I'm on a live podcast. But there's 6 of them, and they inform everything you do. And I can look at my clients and I can look at the people in my programs. And like I said, if somebody is, for example, oh, I can't do that because this won't work because this person's going to say, I know they're in their past is not their future. I know that's their key. I know that's their stopping point. And it's just, they're so important and so foundational that once you have them in place, you have basically a toolkit that you can alchemy any situation you're in, literally any situation you're in. You have a toolkit that you can say, oh, this is what's, oh, self-compassion. This is the first key that I teach. If you don't have self-compassion, you are dead out of the gates. You are not accelerating anywhere. You are not creating a life of authenticity. You are not showing up as yourself. You are not creating good relationships. I can name the breakdowns in your life without having met you.
Wow. That's powerful.
It is.
And I'm just thinking of my own clients right now. As you were saying that, I can look at some of my own clients and I can go, that's exactly where she's stuck. That's exactly where he's stuck. It's so clear.
Yeah. And it's really neat because people are like, oh, you've told me the 6 keys, and then we go into them in depth in the program, and people have their minds blown on a regular basis because when you have them, they seem really simple. They seem so simple. And when you actually look at how many of them you're implementing, in our pre conversations, you were talking about gratitude, and you look at where people break down with gratitude, and it's in the 6 keys.
Because I think again, I think that the past, I think so many folks get stuck in the past. Is that one of the bigger ones, do you think? When you're
They are all big. If I had to like, own your power is the last one. Haha, see?
okay.
They come to me. If I had to say the place that people jam, it is self-compassion. You can't own your
Okay.
past without compassion. You can't have power without compassion. You cannot own your defaults without compassion. You'll spiral out of control into self-beat up, and you'll stop.
Because you're constantly walking on the eggshells again.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
you don't understand how to work with yourself instead of against yourself, if you're trying to conquer your inner critic, you are not in self-compassion. You are in control. And you cannot control your inner child. They will not be controlled. I'm just going to let you know that now. It doesn't work.
This is all powerful stuff. I love it. I love it. So, how do you help others recognize where they're stuck in those 6 keys? What processes do you go through as a coach to help them realize where they are stuck there?
Well, I have a group program that I do. And in the program, one of
Okay.
the first things that we say is go and do the assessment. It's on my website. It's free. You could go take it after our call. Anyone who's watching this can go take it. It's free on my website. And it's the 6 keys assessment. And that'll give you a pretty good general view. It doesn't I feel it could be a lot better. I'm working on a new version, but it gives you that kind of idea. So people get an idea, and but
Mhm.
I find people know. You know if you're giving away your power every time somebody you perceive has more success than you walks in the room. You know if your inner critic is out of control and beats you up over every single mistake you make. You know if you have a default of anger every time someone challenges you. People know, they simply don't have the tools to work with it yet. So when they come into my program, the first thing we do is we teach, again, self-compassion. We have them do the test so they kind of know where they're at. And then we say, okay, how do we recognize it? Here are the tools to recognize. And then we teach that recognizing is a win, because the fear that people come in with, whether they acknowledge it or not, is that they're going to see a lot of hot mess, and then, well, they're going to share it in a group. My group right now has one woman who's she retired at 43, independently wealthy, and we have people who are unemployed. If there isn't this sense that noticing is a win, some people are going to hide in the shadows because they're going to feel they're not good enough to step forward, and that's not going to help them. So, right. So then it's noticing. And then once you notice, how do you get into relationship with whatever it is? That's step 3. And there's all kinds of different tools. Not everybody will need the same tools. So we give a whole bunch of different tools. We have integration exercises, we have training, and that's how I help them. We talk our way through it. It's not therapy. I ask you questions. I give my clients self-coaching. We have something, everybody has their self-coaching cheat sheet. So it's, what are the questions I can ask myself? How do I recognize this? What things have I tried? What has worked? What hasn't? And eventually you become so competent at the recognizing and getting curious that you stop feeling ashamed that it happened. And that's when transformation can happen.
Because then they can travel through those steps so much faster. Whenever
Yes.
something comes up, it becomes the tool that they turn to every time something comes up, that they can run it through those steps so much faster once they've done that a time or two.
Yeah. And basically
And
my goal is to empower people to the point that they don't need me as a coach. So they'll be able to coach themselves through it. That's my goal.
with their toolbox that you've
Yeah.
provided.
With their toolbox, because I'm happy for you to pay me $150 an hour so I will sit down and ask you the same questions. And that works when you get stuck and you're like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm not seeing something. That's what coaching is for, right? For us to
Right,
empower
right,
people
right,
to
right.
see their
Mhm.
gaps.
Now, what advice would you give someone who feels stuck and they just don't know where to start on their journey? Because sometimes you can hand everybody all you can tie it all up in a nice little box and tie it up with a bow and hand it to them, and they'll never open the box and they still stay stuck. Am I right?
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
totally true. And I mean, if somebody is stuck, it is because there is a breakdown in their subconscious safety systems, in one of those 6 keys, in their
Mhm.
ability to work with their own subconscious safety systems. And that might sound like jargon, but really all that means is your body has one foundational purpose, and that is to keep you alive. That's it. Your body is programmed to keep you alive. If that doesn't happen, then nothing else really makes any difference, right?
So they're not facing a lot of those issues because they're in self-preservation mode.
They're in some sort of disruptive mode. So I'm stuck. So, okay, great, you're stuck. Your body has you stuck for a reason, and you're refusing to acknowledge what that reason is. So you're engaging in a pattern that you don't want to let go of. I don't know what that pattern is, but it is something that has kept you safe. It has served a purpose somewhere, and you're refusing to let it go, and that's why you're stuck. And the whole process of the 6 keys is figuring out where that breakdown is, because people can't work with that program, and they cannot uh, create a breakthrough in the areas where the muscles are strong. It's like getting yourself into a boxing ring with a heavyweight champion. You're gonna get murdered. You need this. We need to go through the 6 keys and make sure that everything that you need to work with that program is in place first. Boom. And then we will go and tackle that program. And half the time in going through the 6 keys, they end up tackling the thing anyways. But there are things beyond the 6 keys, obviously. They're not a panacea. They just set you up to be able to do the work.
Right, right.
Does that answer
I
your
think,
question?
yeah, and I think back, and the one that comes to mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the one that comes to mind right now, and the statistics all point to this, is that oftentimes if someone has been abused in any way, that oftentimes they have a weight issue because they have a tendency to hide behind that. And even though they know all the right steps to get healthy, it protects them
Yeah.
from maybe being abused again. And so they hide behind the weight, saying, well, I'm nobody's going to pay any attention to me now. Nobody's going to, because it's safe there. It's a safe place to stay.
Yeah.
And I have a gal that I've worked with, and she knows all the right things to lose the weight. And it finally came out that she felt that she did not want the opposite sex to be attracted to her ever, because she had been abused as a child, and it's her hiding place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she finally realized that, and realizes that she needs to get healthy, but she still doesn't want to move forward with that. She's not ready to move forward yet.
Yeah. And that's, again, I would say, does she have the foundation to move forward? Because that's the thing. One of the comments I hear most often in my program is, oh, I've moved forward more in 4 days or whatever length of the workshop is than I have in 4 years of therapy. And it's not because the therapy wasn't good. It's because they didn't have the foundation in place to be able to bring all that stuff in. It's like saying to a baby, go be an Olympic swimmer, and throwing it in the pool. You've got to learn how to swim. You need to know what water feels like. You have to have some general basic skills that then you can build on, right? And so when it comes to stuff like the weight, does that woman have her self-compassion key dialed in? Probably not.
Probably not.
Past is not your future. Probably not dialed in. Owning your power. Probably not dialed in. There, you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You look at those things, and if you take those things on one small step at a time, one piece at a time, one key at a time, your life changes, and it changes in a way that works for you, right? Sometimes radically, but it works for you. It's beautiful.
And again, you have to just take that first step.
Yes.
And the steps that you're providing are so powerful if somebody just takes that first step.
Take the
Yeah,
step, dial it in.
wow.
And that's the other thing. I know some people have come to me and they've been worried because they've had experiences where, and again, I'm not bashing different coaching mentalities, but there is a coaching mentality where you push your client. And I don't subscribe to any of that. You want to go at a snail's pace, you go at a snail's pace. You want to go like a race car, you go like a race car. That is your journey, not mine. I am a facilitator, I'm not here to push people. And I disagree with that form of coaching vehemently.
No, I agree. I agree. That is, again, that's so important, because again, I don't think that I see that a lot in the school systems, because they have all of these check marks that everybody has to reach a certain level at a certain time, and they're trying to bring the students along, and so oftentimes the students just fall totally out of the system because they can't keep up, and they just quit. And it goes back to that self-defeating image of themselves again, like, well, I'm too dumb, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not good enough, or whatever, and they just stop. So I agree with you. Trying to force somebody to take their next step is never going to work. They have to be ready. They have to be ready to do it.
Well, and especially when it's
And
personal development.
yeah, and I think as a coach, I think it's sometimes hard for us to know when they're ready.
They'll tell you.
Yeah, I think you just have to kind of tune into where they are. And that's sometimes tough when I do some group coaching, and sometimes that's tough in a group.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Bigger groups can get
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah, that is challenging. Now, because of your past experience of feeling stuck and trapped and all of that, how does that influence the way that you work with your clients? Do you find that you work with them maybe differently than other coaches because of your history?
Well, I can't speak to what other coaches are doing because I'm not out there judging other coaches, except in thing like what I just said, where
Mhm,
I'm in groups where people talk about it and I'm like, oh, I don't really agree with that.
mhm.
Um, my approach is very much influenced by my own experience because I was beholden to the judgment. The judgment was like the anchor on my leg because I learned that if you were judged, what follows the judgment is pain, is all kinds of problems. So you wanted to get around that as much as possible. So when I'm working with my students, it's really there's a lot of work with it isn't bad, it's not working. That things that they label as bad, we immediately go into a um, process where I say, where and when in your life did that exact same behavior work? Let's find it. That's not bad, because if we're making any part of us bad, we cannot heal. So big tenet of my coaching is that they go at the pace they want to go at, and that the things that they attempt to tell me are bad, we will work together to understand they don't work in that situation, and that's okay. But they do work in other situations, and that's any part of you. So those might be things that might be a little bit different.
Did you have somebody that came alongside you that helped you get to where you are today?
Well,
Did you have a you when you needed a you?
I didn't have a me, but I did have a when I was going through it, and I was going through the courses and I was doing the work and I was reading all the books, and it was all falling through those cracks because I didn't have my keys dialed in yet. That's how I found out what the keys were. I went to a workshop with a gentleman called Dr. John DeMartini, and he's a fantastic guy, brilliant, love his work. And I had the pleasure of working with him actually. And at one point, he came into one of the breakout rooms that I was in. And I cannot for the life of me remember why I was in this breakout room with this other woman. But she had, private messaged him. And he came into the room and he said, Anna, you're a coach, you're a trainer. This is something that you are born to do. And you just get to step up and do it. And I was like, what? I didn't know I wanted to be a coach. He's like, you do.
So you hadn't even thought about it at that point.
No, I hadn't. I was like, I am a hot, bloody mess, and there is no way, but I will share my mess. And if anyone can benefit from it, that's great. And he's like, exactly.
That's what he saw in you.
But
Interesting.
it was interesting because I had had very few people that I deeply respected uh, tell me things like that. It was a lot of like I was a competitive athlete, so it's a lot of focus on what you're supposed to be improving, not
Okay.
really somebody stepping up and just saying, "Hey, no, this you're excellent at this. Have you like go do this?" So it was beautiful, and I think it was really a message I wanted at the time, desperately wanted to
Okay.
have somebody tell me something.
Okay. That is so interesting. My story is somewhat similar. I had beauty salons for 25 years, and when I finally decided to retire, the comment that I got from almost every one of my clients is they're like, "Who's going to help me solve my problems?" And I'm like, "Wait a minute. I didn't know I was here helping you solve your problems. I thought I was here, working in a salon." And they're like, "No, you solve all my problems. Who am I going to go to now?" And so that's how my coaching started. And a lot of my clients from the salon days are still with me today. So yeah, so that is interesting. So I think it's just inherently in there. And it's
Yeah.
probably been in there with you all along.
Yeah, and I think there's this inherent desire by humans to share their experience in a way that supports other people. I think I meet people like this all the time. They want to share their gifts in a way that does something to elevate the world around them. That's most
Mm-hmm.
people I know or that
Mm-hmm.
I've met. So I think we're born with it. I think we're all born with some sort of gift that we have to
Mm-hmm.
share. It's just figuring out what it is.
Yeah. And sometimes that's the tough part. What
Mm.
role does gratitude play in your daily life, and especially when you're working with your clients?
Well, I mean, gratitude is gratitude is my point. It's my it's like a compass for me. And I use gratitude to highlight where I'm holding energy that I don't need to hold. For example, uh, to have gratitude, I have to appreciate. If I'm in acceptance, I can't have gratitude for that thing because acceptance means that there's something there that I wish was different. I'm going to accept this thing. I'm accepting it. There's energy, there's a force there.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I find I can't have gratitude, I then look and I say, oh, am I in a acceptance? Ah, what's the judgment? What's the thing I'm holding on to? What do I wish was different? What am I, what, right? Why do I have to accept it? Why can't I appreciate it? So I, gratitude, yes, does all kinds of wonderful things. It's wonderful for the nervous system. It's great for your body. It helps all kinds of physiological benefits to gratitude, but also it's a direct pointer for me about where I'm holding on to crap that's going to in the long run probably come back and bite me.
So, does gratitude change those things, or do those things change how you feel about acceptance and gratitude?
So gratitude is where I start because
Okay.
if you say, okay, I don't feel grateful, but I am grateful for this. I am grateful for this. And you can look for it's almost like inviting a self conversation. If I'm not feeling the gratitude, I can have a conversation. I can say, why? What's stopping me? Where is this? It's about me, right? It's about a perception or a belief or whatever it is. I can go in and I can find that. And then, by the way, when that pops, the gratitude isn't effort. It's like,
It's
it's,
already there.
it flows out of you, right? So it's both. It's both the result and the cure.
Okay. I get it. I get it. I'm struggling with a situation right now where
Oh,
I'm accepting, and so I need to change my thinking first.
but I mean, as soon as you see that,
Hmm.
that's beautiful because you can't shift what you can't see.
Right.
So the second you're like, oh, I'm in acceptance. Well, hot dang, win for today.
Yeah. Now I know what to do.
Yes. Now at least I see it. Sometimes, I mean, I'm still in acceptance over things with my ex. I'm straight up. There are still things that I have not fully worked through with that situation. And I see them and I appreciate that. I'm like, okay, well, that's, are we ready? And poke, 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 inner child? Nope. Okay. We're going to get there.
How do you know when you're ready?
Well, you're never ready. But well, sorry, I won't say you're never ready. I have found there is a specific level of resistance that I have yet to be able to push through when it's that great. I have been
Okay.
able to, I've been able to go higher and higher as I get better and better, but there are still some things that I'm like, okay, there's layers here. What's the next small step instead of the big one where I'm going to tackle the whole thing all at once? Because then I won't start.
Very interesting. This has been a very powerful conversation. Can you share a success story of someone you've worked with who has transformed their life and what their journey might have looked like with your coaching?
Oh, yes. I mean, I have a couple of, I, I have so many stories I want to share. There was one person, a woman in my Radiant You program, which is just my group coaching program.
Mhm.
And when she came into the program, she was unable to be in public spaces without panicking. So
Okay.
she grew up in a very structured environment and extreme, like this is the doctrine of the environment, this is who you will be and how you will be. So very extreme environment. And so she, say there was a social event, she would, if she could make herself go, she couldn't go in the room. She had postponed, she was supposed to get an MRI. She had postponed it 3 times, I believe she said, before she started the program. She couldn't do things like return an item at a Walmart because the stress of being in the line was too much. She couldn't deal with it. Anyways, she came into the program. Within 3 weeks, she had not only scheduled and done her MRI, but she had completely been able, she had the tools and the ability to walk herself and her inner child through it without having a panic attack. She completely made it through. She was so excited when she came to the group. She shared publicly about it. She was glowing. She went, I did this. And my inner child, I was talking to her and I was like, you know, this is, I hear you and I see you. And she said it was transformative. She then went and she returned, I can't remember what it was, to a Walmart store. And she, instead of running, because before she would get to the thing and she'd be, oh, you know what? I'm a I'm wasting everybody's time. I shouldn't be at this counter. Da, da, da. She got up there and she owned her power and she went, I am worthy of returning this thing. I am worthy of the time of this clerk. And she got through it. She shared with us. And she had conversations with her husband that she had never had before. And this was just the first friggin' month of the program.
Wow.
Now, I won't say everybody who has panic disorder, or I won't say disorder, who has panic or who has that type of extreme response to the environment will have the same results. This woman went in and she's like, I am going to do this, and she took it on with
She was ready. Yeah.
yeah, she was ready. I had another woman I found out after the fact, also within the first 3 weeks of the program. Um, she signed up for the program and that week was going to kill herself, and attended our first session and thought, well, I can do it next week or whatever. And she came to the next one and she learned a few things, and she is still in the program to this day. So what can happen when you go from not feeling that you have a place on this earth to maybe I'm not broken, to hey, I have power, to wow, look what I can do. This
Hmm.
woman also is starting her own business now.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
How powerful. And it has to make you feel like you've answered the right call
yeah, it
doing
does.
what you're doing. Yeah.
My only regret is I want to reach more people. I want to reach more people because if these are the results, how many people could benefit from this information?
I agree. And we're going to certainly do our part of promoting what you're doing uh, with our audience. And as a free gift to you, we're also going to put you in our speakers cabinet so that folks that are looking for a guest to be on their podcast, or they need a speaker for an event, that they will contact you. Now, where are you coming to us from geographically?
I am from Winnipeg, Canada, right in the middle.
Okay. Okay, so you are in Canada. I am just outside of Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
So I'm kind of centrally located just below the Great Lakes in the center of Ohio, of the state of Ohio. So this has been a very interesting conversation. I loved that you're here. And how can all of our listeners connect with you? How can they find you? uh, to learn more about what it is that you do, or maybe they've already decided, I need to connect with her. I need to get into her program. How do I do it? Just tell me where.
Well, you can connect with me on www.annalang.ca. You can also connect with me on Facebook. Permission to Shift is the name of the Facebook group, and that's a free group, and I post in there pretty regularly. I'm on Instagram. I am everywhere. Same with I'm Permission to Shift 43 on YouTube.
Okay. Okay. Are all of those links on your website if they get to your website?
They are.
Okay, so annalang.ca.
Yep.
Very good. I put that in the chat, and I will also put that in the description of our replay so that folks can find you. So Anna, thank you so much for being with us today. So I want to thank everybody for listening in. Sherry, thank you for being on in the audience. We see that you're here and know that you're multitasking today. And Coach Anna Lang, thank you so much. And please stay tuned. We're going to end the recording.
Thank you so much, Kathy.